Oh yeah, we figured it out. It's there we go. We're live. Hey, how are you? Were you waiting a long time? I don't know, maybe an hour. We did it. We're here. We're back. We're live. The BCX, Brian Campbell, Revolution Experience, whatever we're calling it these days. I got a lot of things going on right now. Just wrapped up all my editorial responsibilities, and just recently wrapped, of course, is the card of the century, the last crescendo, 7 action-packed fights in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The turkey show was on the table. Cream, get on top. That's what we're talking about, Robert Rowan. All right. I am your boy, BC. I am here to break all of this down. Let me close the door 1 second. Hold on. You got to stay with me. We're trying our best here. All right, let's go. Let's get it. Let's hit it. Let's hit it. It was the card of the century. Beterbiev, Bivol, part 2 in the main event. Oh my God, it was fun. It happened. We're going to break it all down. All 7 fights on this card right here, right now. Your boy BC Solo coming at you. People are like, yo, where's my guy? I thought we were promised Rafe Bugs. Rafe had to jack. It was understandable. But BC going to be here on the BCX, going to straighten this camera, going to make it happen. Pleasure to be here. Thank you all for taking part. But let's do it. We got a lot to talk about. It was the same scores as the first time around just 4 months ago when Beterbiev and Bivol, of course, met in the same Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for the undisputed light heavyweight title clash. Only this time the scores were inverted. A majority decision. We don't do spoiler alerts here on Insta Reactions. What are you, crazy? A majority decision in the favor of Dmitry Bivol. 114-114 even. 116-112. 115-113. How did BC have it? Just like the first fight. 7 rounds to 5. 115-113 in favor of Bivol. So you're asking, what was the difference between the first 2 fights? And Bivol deserving this decision. Now, you know, I scored the first fight for Bivol, as did a lot of people. The CompuBox stats were in his favor. There was a lot in his favor. What was not in his favor was him backpedaling during the final 3 fights. What do we got going on here, Alex Torres? Straight up doing a live chat with a flannel on. Yeah, I mean, that it happened. All right. I was wearing it under a suit coat on CBS Sports HQ, but that's another topic for another second. The first fight, Bivol backpedaling in the championship rounds. It was a bad visual. It was late pressure from Beterbiev. 40 years old, the gas tank, right? This time around, though, it was a little bit different because Bivol has been saying all during fight week, I just need to do more. That's really exactly what he did. He put more work in training camp to make sure that he was the fresher fighter in the second half of this. And you can see it on the CompuBox stats overall, as during the second half of this fight, after a fantastic sequence of middle rounds from Beterbiev, when he was landing the bigger shots, when he was putting just tremendous pressure all over Bivol, where moments that looked like Bivol was hurt, maybe he would succumb to that pressure. What happened over the final 6 rounds? Bivol outlanding Beterbiev in 5 of those final 6 rounds, scoring in double figures and punch connects for 11 of 12 rounds overall, outlanding, Beterbiev by a margin of 170 to 121 over those 12 rounds at a higher percentage, according to CompuBox. And how about 40% of Bivol's power punches landing? Even more important, compared to the first fight, Bivol landed he attempted 11 more punches per round than that first fight. So you had Bivol coming off early, as you expected. Beterbiev's a little bit of a late starter traditionally, and I really like the way that Bivol came off. First round was tactical, a little bit slow, but that pace really picked up. You saw Bivol get off with the jab. I really liked his distance control, all of that stuff. Yes, we do have markings on the forehead. We are live. I had a mishap yesterday with the storm door. I had to take it off the hinges. It hit me in the forehead. It happens. All right. It happens. Yeah, Stephen K, catch up. No Rafe, he jacked, but we love the guy right here. Okay. This time around, shout out to the Long Island Luke in the main card minute, as always. This time around, it was Bivol. And I really thought he would succumb in those middle rounds because Beterbiev really stepped on that gas tank and really seemed to almost go for the finish, almost really try to say, look, second time around, we're not going to have a flip the coin in the judges' decisions. But I wonder, because Bivol was able to take those shots ultimately so well, Did Beterbiev at 40, pour out a little too much of that jug, gas himself out just a little bit? You obviously wouldn't know that, by the way, by his 12th round performance. I scored the 12th round for Beterbiev, and not only did he open a cut on the left eye of Bivol, I really thought he found what was left in that gas tank, got on Bivol, chased him around, hurt him with a big right hand late when they both attempted at the same time, but ultimately could not get it done. Look, this is a really close fight, as the first one was. So many rounds. I mean, the first one felt like there were a lot more rounds you could flip. This one, it felt like the rounds Bivol won were closer. The rounds Beterbiev won were wider in terms of the visual of what he accomplished. He just didn't win more rounds ultimately than Bivol. And the fact that this time around Bivol was streaking late, that he was the fresher, better fighter late, really, really speaks to taking to heart that first loss, going back into training camp, figuring out, what we said in Morning Combat when Luke challenged me in the preview on Friday is, how would this fight look different? I thought it was actually going to look a lot like the first fight. They just both were going to amp it up. Now, what I thought that meant, and I was wrong, was I thought it was going to be an action fight, where the first fight was the vaunted BC special, the technical thriller, right? The TT, get a little titties on that. Sometimes they'll roll out a TT on you. You're like, whoa, how did I get here? Anyway, this time around, though, it wasn't that, but it was Bivol committing to being more active. But he didn't win the fight on activity alone nor by outboxing Beterbiev, the guy who's not considered the bigger puncher, which is Bivol, which, by the way, was the same guy who did seem to land the bigger shots in the first fight, including around 7 in the first fight when he wobbled Beterbiev. It was ultimately Bivol in the second half of this fight sitting down on his counter shots, because more often than not in this fight, Beterbiev was the aggressor. But because we're talking about two living legends, two future Hall of Famers, there's very few artists out there in the boxing game, very few dance partners that can get together and can give you a fight this technical. Sure, it was it's a technical thriller. I mean, sure, it was thrilling in the sense that it was exciting and you didn't know who was going to win. Not a fight of the year contender per se. I did actually think the first fight was a little more exciting, but you're watching two guys that are so skilled at what they do that they could stand at the distance that they stand and still not batter each other because their defense is so strong. So both put in incredible defensive efforts, but I think it was Bivol who really mixed movement, a lot more head movement. And like I just said, standing firm and countering, where he was countering with combinations. And I think that really began to overwhelm Beterbiev as we got into rounds 9, 10, 11. And I really had Bivol pulling away on my scorecard right now until Beterbiev took that final round. It ends up being 7-5 on my score, which was the same score as one of those three judges that I mentioned. They had it 7-5 and 8-4 for Bivol. Could you have had it 114 like the third judge? Well, yeah. I mean, look, ultimately we're talking about a very close fight. Ultimately, we're talking about two top operators. We're talking about two of the best skilled. To be able to fight at that pace with that level of skill is just ridiculous. But shout out to Bivol at 34. We thought the 40-year-old Beterbiev is always going to have the better gas tank in the second half, but no, it was Bivol on this time. And we thought Beterbiev is the kind of big puncher that nobody can stand and trade with him. Well, Bivol can do that. He can also outbox him when he needs to. So he didn't do it by much, but he did it, Dmitry Bivol, on getting his hand raised. So now what do we need here? We need a third fight. Do we need it immediately? It's an interesting thought. Now, Turki Al-Sheikh ringside, who had an interesting night, we can get into that, did seem to give the three fingers up to Beterbiev as he walked by him at ringside, which we know. Coming into this fight, Turki had said, if Bivol wins, we're doing an immediate rematch. It did seem like his story was changing during that very awkward interview on the DAZN stage with Adi Oladipo before the main event, where suddenly, and when they came off the heels, by the way, of a David Benavidez interview with Chris Mannix, who was ringside, and suddenly you had Turki kind of challenging Al Heyman and going, we want Benavidez to, if Beterbiev wins, we'll have him fight Benavidez, and we'll come on, Al Heyman, get it done. And it's like, I don't like when Turki does that. I don't like when he makes future plans before the fight happens. I don't like when he makes favorites and all that stuff. I got some gripes with him on this show. Overall, though, Turki did a very good job. This fight card started in debacle form for me, meaning the pay-per-view kicks off. There's endless talking. There's 4 broadcast teams. There's so many talking heads. They're previewing all these fights, and then we get a prospect fight with a 2-0 guy against a guy with a record of like 342-3, and you're like, what are we doing here, right? Well, as soon as this card actually kicked in, it was about 12:30 when we were all losing our patience Eastern time and going, are we going to do this or what? Once they trotted out Buatsi and Callum Smith and they put on just an absolute fire fight to kick off the night, it really was fast-paced throughout. I think the zone corrected a lot of its issues that it's had in these Turkey marathon cards with, that one August 3rd of last year in LA with a lot of the ridiculousness of the car giveaway and the trips to Saudi giveaway and the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame honorary induction. It got a little bit ridiculous. We didn't have as much of that or really anything close to that. So shout out to everybody on the pacing. Shout out to, they didn't even do post-fight interviews a lot of times. It was so quick. We like that. Back to what I was saying about the trilogy, though. It makes sense next. Only Bivol did say he needs time. He said he was hurt heading into this fight, had injuries, said he was taking anti-inflammatories daily. He would really like to be 100% against Beterbiev. These guys just fought 24 somewhat hellacious rounds, meaning at a very high pace with constant adjustments, both of them being good punchers. And they did it in like 120 something days. So I can fully understand that if we have to push that off a little bit, I don't think you necessarily need anybody else to step in. But given Turkey's control, given his reach, given that he gets what he wants most of the times, if you didn't do a trilogy next immediately, could you do some kind of amazing semifinals where it would be like, Bivol just won, so he's the champion. What if we did Bivol Canelo 2 on one side of the bracket, Beterbiev Benavidez on the other side, only under the understanding here that you're going to force the winners to fight together. So inevitably, we're going to get through that process, either Beterbiev Bivol 3 anyway, or potentially Canelo Benavidez in some form, whether they both win or both lose. Maybe I'm just playing celebrity fantasy matchmaker here a little bit too much. And yeah, I've got an abrasion on my forehead. By the way, did you see the abrasions on Beterbiev's forehead? The swelling around his eyes. Then you got that mouse under the eye of Bivol after round 8. You got that cut in round 12 on his left side. This was pretty hellacious for a fight that was so technical and fast and back and forth. I'd like to go outside the box and bring in those other names, but it was interesting to see Turkey say, Heyman, come on, let us make this fight with Benavidez. So that would lead you to believe here that although we have seen PBC fighters appear on Turkey Al-Sheikh cards, last August we saw Pitbull Cruz. Do we see somebody else on there too? David Morrell Jr. This time we get Carlos Adames. But he kind of got jobbed on that decision, it felt like. And there's that weird video about Turkey right there with the scoring and getting in Sheeraz's corner. We'll get to that. So I don't know how much Mr. Heyman wants to do this moving forward. But they did fly Benavidez out. He did seem amiable and wanted the winner. It's going to be interesting moving forward politically for PBC. Do they stiff arm Turkey? Do they bring it in? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But I didn't think the rematch was as good as the first fight. I still thought this rematch was very entertaining. It didn't this fight card, after that initial, what are we doing here? This fight card was banger, banger, banger in different styles of fights. As my colleague at CBS Sports, Brent Brookhouse, pointed out, it did hit a lull there with both the Adames Sheeraz fight, even though it was competitive and interesting, wasn't overly entertaining. And then the real want of that one-sided Shakur Stevenson fight that I get why they did that, why they flew out that electrician, why they, you want to keep the show going. You want Shakur's star power there. You want to be able to say, hey, look, this guy could fight Tank next, but I don't think anybody wins with a mismatch like that. It did kind of bring down the great momentum that was building on that card. I'm being highly critical from an entertainment factor only, but all in totality, the last fight on the card, which needs to be good to kind of make the whole thing great, it was very good. It was a very good fight card. And even with the length, like I said, of 7 hours, comparative to some of those insane WrestleMania cards, I remember that one in 2019 when I was at Giant Stadium and it kicked off at like noon, didn't end until after midnight. It's like, what? This is unnecessary. This didn't actually feel like that because the fights kind of mattered and there was for a while an escalation of entertainment. But let's get into those fights. Let me just hold on. I got some work text coming in. Hang with me here. Okay. So I was happy for Bivol. I didn't have a stream or a link to try to check out Katie Bivol if she was doing another companion one, but considering that guy went through a rough divorce and things went public, and then I thought he fought his balls off in that first fight. I thought he stepped up to the bigger fighter and had the better moments, even though he faded late. Okay, we had to go to a second fight. This is a manly victory from Bivol. And you do have to ask yourself how much better Beterbiev being 40, even though this time he wasn't coming directly off knee surgery, whether that slowed him down. Please don't tell me this is Luke Thomas on mute again on his own show. I don't know if that's true, but that's a nice running joke right there. Shout out to Luke Thomas. There we go. Wow. Let's get into this fight card top to bottom. Here we go. Let's go. We'll go from the top down, if you will. Okay. If you will. So that co-main event, there was almost the feeling when Daniel Dubois pulled out, less than 2 days before the main event, that there really was only one name outside of if they called AJ or something, right? There really was only one name that could fill the hole and possibly upgrade it, and that was Parker-Bakole. And shout out to 315-pound Parker-Bakole from the Congo, who was like, yeah, not in training camp, but who cares? Let's show up. Let's make the money. Hopefully they'll buy me a house. Let's do it. And he was game, and he did come in there against Joseph Parker and try to make magic happen. But he was going to be limited by the fact that he was bigger, not in the gym and all of that stuff. So in totality, that fight against Joseph Parker, which ends up going down as an early stoppage for Parker. And I don't want to take away from what Parker has done and is doing in this own resurgence. He's not going to get the same attention that Daniel Dubois had on him last year as runner up for fighter of the year and had this complete turnaround of destruction, yet quietly, even though that Zhilei Zhang fight with Parker was questionable on the decision, he's quietly really turned it around. I mean, when he lost that title unification bout to Anthony Joshua, I'm talking about Joseph Parker right here, all the way back in 2018, and then loses to Dillian White immediately after, I thought he was done at the highest level. I mean, he worked his way back with wins, and then he gets KO'd in the 11th round by Joe Joyce, and you're like, okay, he had a good run. He beat Chisora twice. It's fine. But to his credit, he's chipped away. He stops Wilder, takes the decision from Wilder, takes another close decision from Zhang, and then comes in here and in 2 rounds gets Bakole out of there. Now, it was a little bit weird the way it went down, meaning that first round, Parker just kind of jabbing from the outside, Bakole just feeling things out. Second round, though, Bacole's basically like, I can't go 12 rounds, so I'm going to start going downhill on you. And you got to see that poor man's George Foreman bully style of Bakole, just getting all up on Parker in that variety of body shots, up at high, low, high combinations, all that good stuff going on. But then Joseph Parker, who not only has been bulking up from his earlier days as champion, they did say on the broadcast that he is purposely now for this camp was eating carbs all week and trying to get as big as possible, preparing for Daniel Dubois, knowing it's probably going to be a slugfest and it'll have to be sturdy. And by the way, Joseph Parker used to be much more of a boxer in big fights. And I think that he's taking more chances now because he knows he has to. He's taking smart chances. So he lands a nice right-hand counter on Bakole. Only Bakole does the boogeyman routine and just laughs at it and shakes his head. But to Parker's credit, he came right back with a looping right hand. And it was a grazing one. It's one of those that you really had to see on the replay to make sure. Did that hit flush? Grazing, but flush on the temple. Sometimes that's all, whether you're talking about the chin or the temple, that's all you need. It's just that certain amount of pressure in the right angle in the right moment to either turn the chin or, in this case, set off the equilibrium. So a delayed reaction from Bakole, and he kind of looks like Humpty Dumpty comedically falling back. Now, he did beat the 10 count. And at first I'm like, you're stopping this already? Like, I get that he hasn't been fully trained, but he's a big boy. He can handle himself. And then his corner ultimately throws in the towel. So it did have a womp womp because it is part of Parker's resurgence. And afterwards, Parker's like, I want to fight for the big title, meaning I don't just want to reschedule the Daniel Dubois fight for the IBF belt. Like, hey, Usyk, let's do this. Now, you could do that fight. It wouldn't be awful. We'd be excited to see it. Parker more or less has earned it. But if we only have 2 fights left for Alexander Usyk, and one of those he wants Pereira, Poatan, MMA crossover, then I'd much rather see Parker and Dubois for real. Or, no disrespect to Joseph Parker, he showed up and won, and he had the balls to take on a boogeyman opponent on literally no notice. I kind of want Dubois to get healthy and go into an Usyk fight in a rematch. Is that crazy, right? You'd want an undisputed champion. So I want that. I hope we get that. Could you still get Parker a big fight? Well, yeah, you can. And how about Ajit Kabayel, who now has the WBC interim title? That was the other heavyweight card on this fight. Big Bang Zhilei Zhang, who has been milking his gimmick, his no Diddy gimmick, his bang you thing. And like we said on Friday's MK, or I said, it's past overdue, it's overplayed. But the joy that man shows in just being 41-year-old Big Bang Zhang, I'll see him fight every 2 months. I mean, this guy's great theater. He's always going to gas out, but he lands big shots. And I was very questionable coming in of whether Ajit Kabayel was a one-night wonder against Frank Sanchez, because we really hadn't heard much of him before that, or whether he was truly a heavyweight that's coming on that has specific skills that are interesting for this division. And to the Germans' credit, he was putting it on Zhang, and then Zhilei Zhang lands a perfect counter left hand that drops him. And that was kind of interesting. So you're like, okay, maybe he's not for real. Maybe this isn't the guy. But Kabayel gets up and he starts putting it on. He starts going to the body. And 1 round later, in round 6, he drops Zhang and he ultimately finishes him. This is a big ass win here. And I know Zhang is such a feast or famine type of guy, but he is quasi elite. He has been. And he wasn't, by the way, Big Bang Zhang, for like 12 years. He was this guy with this inflated, unbeaten record who would gas out and almost lose to journeyman. But this is where I give so much credit to his coach, Sean George, who really put in the time to teach him how to box and make him dangerous. And because of that, and because of the run Zhang has been on, and like we said, Zhang dropped Parker twice, and you could argue he should have won that decision. I hope he still lingers in the division and can get some opportunities. But I also hope we can consider this what it is, a breakthrough win for Ajit Kabayel, who's now 26-0 with 18 KOs. Now, granted, every fight on this card, whether it was a pure title fight or not, had a lot of bogus titles thrown at it to kind of spice it up. So every fight got a interim WBC title, which is, in boxing, it's basically means you're number 1 contender or you're fighting next for the belt. They're not real titles, but there's already enough of not real titles lingering around like crazy. Hernas De La Cruz with throwing some smoke here at Bakole, showing up to get paid and left with a concussion. Yeah, well, I mean, he probably got paid very, very well, considering the dude that Shakur beat up got crazy money in a new house, right? So yeah, there you go. Yoink. Yeah, that's what Zhang does. The feast or famine. That's the feast or famine with that guy. I was happy for Ajit Kabayel. I want to see him in a big fight. I wouldn't hate him versus Joseph Parker, even though it's a odd downgrade. It's an odd punishment in a sense for Parker, who, like I said, did nothing wrong, agreed to fight a dangerous guy on last minute notice and got him the hell out of there. But we got to get Dubois Usyk next. We got to get AJ Fury next. And then some of these second tier guys, which I'm sorry, Parker's still in that second tier below the title holders. How about they fight each other? How about Kabayel against him? Interesting. Let's keep going down this card. I know I've been picking around and piecemealing. The fight that I thought should have been upgraded to co-main event and really was the sleeper action fight on the card. Really was the fight on the card that could steal the whole night. And that was, of course, in the 154-pound division. Forget the interim WBC belt on the line. This was really about Virgil Ortiz's Jr.'s continued comeback here at 154, forced to move up in weight after those medical issues, scored 3 wins last year, had the big fight of the year candidate win over Boachuk despite getting dropped twice. I didn't think he was on Madrimov's level in terms of, I thought he would put up a great fight. I thought this could be another fight of the year candidate, but I thought the skills of Madrimov, who coming in with a 10-1-1 record, right? One of those guys that wanted the smoke early after his long amateur career. We know what he did against Terrence Crawford in his last fight. He lost his title, but he elevated his name so far. Hold on, I got to let Zoe the cat out. This is how I live. Okay. ahead, Phil. All right, back at it. But this turned out to be a way different fight. And I got to give so much credit to Virgil Ortiz Jr., who is now 23-0 with 21 KOs. But remember, when he was forced up to 54, we were like, is his power going to carry? Is his chin going to carry? What happens when he goes in there against elite boxers? Well, this was that perfect elite boxer who could come out and make him look really bad in the first couple rounds, which kind of happened. Now, really bad is strong. Just as I claimed it was an outclassing in the early rounds, and my colleague Brent Brohouse was like, "Yo, hold on that," and he may have been right there, but it was Madrimov using all of the tricks and tools that make him difficult, the feints, the great head movement, the great footwork. But the best part about Virgil Ortiz in this fight, and the thing I didn't expect, was that he showed championship level poise to be able to weather the storm, punt a couple rounds, but still work on, with his great trainer, Robert Garcia, trying to get inside, trying to figure out the angles, corner Madrimov, and get in there. And he ultimately did. And this was a fun fight to watch skill-wise, back and forth. It ends up being a unanimous decision, 117-111 and 115-113 on two scorecards. The biggest victory of his career by far, even though, he beat Boachuk, he beat Mean Machine, he beat Maurice Hooker by knockout. I mean, he's had Virgil Ortiz some very good wins, but a lot of those at 147. This was really an announcement that we may find out that he ends up being the best fighter at 154. Now, that's a heavy statement because, hey, BC, Bud Crawford has one of the 154 belts. I don't know how long Bud Crawford's going to be there, though. I don't know if he'll ever defend that belt. I don't know if he'll ever fight again outside of Canelo, right? So within the sub-Bud 154, you've got a lot of risers or old names that want to reestablish themselves. Think Charlo, think Tim Tszyu coming off of 2 defeats. This was a big win to announce to the division of who this guy still is. A guy that we knew could box, but a guy that is known for his two-handed power, his ability to get in the clinch with you, get in the phone booth and absolutely give it to you. The adjustments that Ortiz made to stay poised, but continue to find a way to back up Madrimov. And then eventually, when the motor of Madrimov and the punches of Ortiz started to slow him down a bit, and the fight really got on more even terms, it was really VO that elevated it. Now, VO was the nickname, of course, that we used to give Victor Ortiz, who had the VO face lube face wash and that weird commercial with him fixing the car next to the basketball court. Remember that thing? But what was hilarious on this broadcast was when Bernard Hopkins, the promoter of Virgil Ortiz, was interviewed ringside and twice called him Victor and said he was the underdog, but which wasn't true. That was a little bit weird. But hey, meet B-Hop in the men's room and talk that ish to his face, if you know what I'm talking about. I'm looking back over my notes here. It really was Ortiz just figuring out how to control the middle range, and really just he stopped getting baited by Madrimov's crazy movement. And really, like, he almost adjusted quicker than Bud Crawford did, to be fair. It was really beautiful stuff. And, Bud ends up going on to win that very close fight, showing his veteran guile. It just did a little bit differently than Virgil. But Virgil, with that constant pressure with the counter right hands, ends up bloodying the nose of Madrimov in round 10. And then he picked up that pace in the championship rounds with the pressure hooks and great body work. Breakthrough win. I mean, the biggest winner on this card is Bivol, but you could argue Virgil Ortiz Jr., is right there with him. Wasn't the fight of the year we all intended, or I was trying to preach to people, but it certainly was a very important fight. And I think even though Madrimov now comes on back-to-back defeats, he's still super elite in this division and will give a lot of people problems with that movement. I mean, it was really hard for Bud to figure that out. And I got to give Ortiz and his team so much credit for learning how to swim in the deep end in this fight. Then we had that middleweight tilt. And this became, unfortunately, because the first few fights were so good, this became the, hey, I got to go to the bathroom and heat up my lunch fight for a lot of people. This was Carlos Adames coming in 24-1, WBC middleweight world title, has not had the reign he would have wanted, right? Would have wanted to have gone through Jamal Charlo, would have gotten some big fights, did chip away, stoppage of J. Rock Williams, beats Terrell Gaucher, but he comes in and gets Hamza Sheeraz with the unbeaten record and the power punching. And for a while, it was as if Adames was just really having issues with the height of Sheeraz. And I really like that Sheeraz, who had been a knockout destroyer, but hadn't fought anybody on this level, of this ilk, of this veteranship of Adames, who can switch stances, right? Used to be trained by Bob Santos, now trained by Ismail Salas. Like, he's a smart fighter. And he can get dirty if he needs to. But this didn't turn into an action fight. It was a kind of slow technical fight in a lot of ways. But I got to give Adames a lot of credit, because for a while, Sheeraz was picking him off with power shots, punching down from the outside and really making it hard for Adames to get any type of success. But Adames stayed true to what he was trying to do. Pressure, never reckless, and just constantly getting inside, high guard, and using his defense, being able to land pot shots and all that. I thought it was a beautiful performance, and I thought particularly in the second half, he was really banking rounds. Now, Sheeraz attempted a last stand late, and it wasn't bad. But I didn't like this scorecard at all, or the scorecards, the result, which ends up being a draw. It goes down as 115-114 for Sheeraz, 118-110 for Adames, which is like 10 rounds to 2, and certainly isn't the fight that we saw. But I have to ask, is 114-114 the fight we saw? Is 115-114 Sheeraz the fight we saw? In my opinion, no. Now, even though I retweeted, maybe, reactively retweeted Chris Mannix's tweet that it was a robbery and Adames got screwed, was it a robbery in the end? My colleagues were telling me probably not. Brent Brookhouse took over the live blog for me on CBS Sports during that fight. He did have it a draw, and I respect his scoring and his opinion in fight sports. So not a screw job, not a straight up robbery per se, but it had one of those feelings where this fight was about, Adames was almost a prop in this fight. Now, this fight was one of the 4 of the 7 that was deemed 5 stars by BoxRec. So it definitely was a really good fight. And for that division, one that we needed to see. But this fight was about finding out if Hamza Sheeraz is, and am I pronouncing that correctly? Probably. Hamza Sheeraz. Whether he's for real, whether he's elite, whether these second and third tier guys that he's knocking out, whether these guys are, whether he's of this level. And I think even though he had good moments, even though he didn't break, even though he didn't fall apart, this was supposed to be, in my opinion, where he tried to meet the level, came up short, not a flop, not a fraud, but he would have to go back to the drawing table and say, okay, I'm going to have to be busier, because it was nice single shots from Sheeraz in the second half, but the pressure of Adames and just the smart veteran touching was enough. So I don't think it was fraud checked in that regard, Stoic Otter, right? Because that was the question that they were asking on social media, and I didn't think so. I want to make this point too. Hold on, not that point. This one, Bivol. It didn't help that even the UK commentary says Bivol 11, even though they were cheering Sheeraz the entire fight, had Adames winning. Well, I want to say one thing about the British. I really have not, I don't have anything against British guys or British broadcasters, some legendary voices in that. And, I've seen a million fights called by British guys, but like, considering how big these DAZN fights are, the times that they take the American broadcast team of Todd Grisham and those guys, or take one off and plug in 3 or 4 Brits, for an American wanting to watch these big fights, and DAZN being, well, DAZN isn't the home of boxing in America per se. It's trying to brand itself as the global home of boxing, right? It's an international streaming app. I don't love that. I don't love that it's always British broadcasters. So I hadn't realized until I saw Christina Poncher of ESPN's tweets that if I backed out of my DAZN broadcast, that there was the US commentary or the British one. The reason why I'm against the British one is I just feel like the announcers are much bigger homers, not even homers always to UK born fighters, but they tend to follow a direction in their calling of whoever's had success early, that success never changes. And they seem to somehow miss what's going on the B side. So when I found out mid card that I can put on Grisham, Mannix, and Mora and Sean Porter at times, that's fine. Do I love that DAZN employs about 86 announcers per per broadcast? No, I don't. Do we need BC on that broadcast? Baby Stoic Otter asks. Well, you got to ask yourself that, okay? I know I'll be on the PBC broadcast a week from today. You're damn right. All right, let's do that. So I felt like Adames should have won 7-5 or 8-4 and didn't, even though one judge had it 118-110. But here's what I really don't like. I retweeted the videos. If you haven't seen them, you can check them out. There were a lot, since there were so many promoters. Remember, the big 5 promoters plus Boxer, if you want to count them, the 6th biggest promoter of the 14 fighters in these 7 main cards, they're represented by every promoter out there, including PBC, which had Tom Brown representing them with Adames. So you had a lot of different people ringside, and people are different social media people, and they're picking up videos. Here's what I didn't love after the fact. When we all felt like Sheeraz got a heavy benefit of the doubt on the scoring, what you don't want after that, because you're already, anytime there's a scorecard that the mass doesn't agree with, and this fight had a few of you. One team, 118-110 Adames. That's not the fight we saw, but neither was, in my opinion, Sheeraz winning or it being even. You're going to have people talking about corruption. Every promoter, every network, it always happens. Oh, they put the stuffed envelope in the judge's pocket, right? So, like, we want to avoid that, especially on a day or night like this in Saudi, where even though they moved it from the big 20,000 seat arena to the more intimate 6,001, which didn't have that big fight feel that this card should have demanded. I mean, could you imagine Beterbiev Bivol with that pace and the back and forth and the adjustments, or even Madrimov Ortiz with those adjustments back and forth at that pace that like a crowd would have just amped that up. But I got bigger issues beyond the crowd or fights being in Saudi that we were used to in the past, being in the US or the UK or what have you. Did you see the videos I'm talking about? There's 2 angles of it. So at the end of the Sheeraz versus Adames fight, Turkey is seen running to the corner of Sheeraz, aggressively yelling to Sheeraz's corner to tell them that Sheeraz is down 2 rounds. And then finally he gets Sheeraz's attention. You're down 2 points. And I guess in an attempt to try to rally him. Guys, this is a really, really, really bad look, whether the result is conspiratorial and you know, corruptive, or it's just instead he preferred that fighter. Now, look, I'm not new to the Turkey game. We know Turkey has favorites. We know whenever there's, you know, big Usyk Fury interviews, Turkey's in the room with Fury. Like I get that. I don't like that. I don't like that Turkey presents who his favorite guys are. I don't like when he, like I said, when he's like, I got this guy fighting on this fight, but if he wins, he's going to fight these 2 fights coming up. I don't necessarily think you should do that. I think it's disrespectful of the B sides. I think if a promoter, now he's not a promoter, but he's the boss. I mean, it's like saying Al Heyman isn't a promoter. Yeah, he's a manager. He's an advisor. But he's the boss of everything that happens at PBC. Like, we know this. Turkey's the boss of everything that's happening on DAZN, basically anywhere in elite boxing outside of PBC at the moment, right? So his power is huge. So even if this is as innocent as it can be, and what do I mean by that? I put tweets out there kind of speculating like, hey, I don't know what this is, but it's a bad look. And Chris Mannix did DM me afterwards. He works on the DAZN broadcast. And he was like, just to let you know, Turkey had access to my scorecard, meaning Chris Mannix's, who does the unofficial scoring, meaning this. There was likely a monitor at ringside. Turkey either saw the monitor and saw Mannix's score, or, you know, sitting next to Frank Warren, who was just as animated, getting in the corner of his fighters and trying to rally them. They probably found out that on the broadcast, according to Chris Mannix, Sheeraz was down. So in this case, if that's true, this isn't corruption, but this is a guy who you would hope would be unbiased, in control of everything. Like, he's the judge and the jury when it comes to boxing now, or the matchmaker, the everything. He's paying for it, not only with his country's seemingly undisputedly huge war chest, but his own private equity that he's purchased the ring, and he's going to take the ring series on the road to Alcatraz, and Ryan Garcia and Haney maybe in Times Square. For somebody in that power to not just have fighters that are their friends, not just have favorites in big fights that they're putting on and promoting, but literally going to the corner to try to rally and giving information. is a really bad look. Let's say it on the flip side. Let's imagine, we know Dana White at times we criticize him because not for playing favorites, but for the opposite, for having grudges against certain fighters, not putting the belt around Francis's waist after, making certain matchmaking decisions where you're like, oh, he just hates that guy. Like that can happen. It's not a great look, but I don't even think that's as bad as this. Imagine if, DDP's fighting Strickland for the middleweight championship and Dana goes up to the corner of Strickland and says, hey, Nixick, I think he's down around. Like, tell him he's down on the scorecards. You'd be like, that's too far. Okay. I know it when I see it. I know when I smell it, that's too far. You're the promoter. You're impartial. You're the one setting the terms and setting the matchups. Like, stop that chat. Okay. Stop it. And Turkey does it, and it wasn't like casual. It was like aggressive. Like he went to the corner and was like, tell him, and obviously the look is awful because the last thing you would want for somebody with an iron fist that is taking this broken, disjointed sport and actually organizing it in ways that are some that are scary, some that are like, oh my God, we never dreamed of this. You're going to have favorites and you're going to openly cheer, or maybe it's not that. Does he have access to the actual scorecards, which would be, illegal? I mean, the WBC did flirt with open scoring in the last 15 years. There's been certain fights, but they announced it ahead of time. The scores are announced to the crowd after the 8th round and the whatever, the 4th round, 8th round, whatever, how the rules worked. You obviously, even if it's not corruptive, like I'm sending this picture, the fact that when you see that video, the first thing you're going to think of is corruption is the kind of thing we don't need. That's what I'm trying to say. There's also a video that the second the 12th round ends for Sheeraz versus Adames, Turkey gets out of his seat and runs over somewhere in ringside. I'm saying these videos are only adding to this idea of like, this guy has all the power. And like that interview with Mike Coppinger of ESPN after Canelo spurned Jake Paul to sign with Turkey, when Turkey straight up said, yeah, oh, by the way, I've been lying to everybody for 48 hours and using the ring to give false information to sway the negotiations in my favor. The fact that he so brazenly told the truth in that spot, it's not as if I don't believe that the same bullshit we don't like that Dana does, that every other boxing promoter isn't doing it, or the same bullshit that we think Turkey may or may not be doing, that everybody else doesn't do it. I always say this about Eddie Hearn, because I always say, first and foremost, promoters are used car salesmen. It's their job to lie and trick you and try to hook you on there, right? But I always like the ones that'll either tell the truth, or like a guy like Eddie Hearn will be so smooth and not telling you the truth that you're like, yeah, this guy makes me feel good. I'll buy from him. Yeah. You want to, yeah, I'll buy auto parts from him. Sure. That's fine. So it's the brazenness of Turkey being like, oh yeah, I was lying, as if it's matter of fact. And this is part of the playbook. And now the potential brazenness of just being like, even though I'm supposed to be this impartial guy, I'm cheering like hell for this guy to win. And then this guy gets a decision people don't think he deserves, like cheering like hell to the point that he's going in the corner and motivate. Maybe I'm talking too long on this. Maybe you all are going, yeah, not a big deal. This smells really bad. There's something rotten in the state of Riyadh, and that was not cool, in my opinion. Just my take. Okay. You can have your own take. It might not even be this, like I said, it just might be, oh, I really like that fighter, and this is the fight of his life. And, but hey, you don't get to do that publicly, this brazenly. Actually, you get to do that because you control everybody. So what am I talking about? What do I expect? All my journalist friends are going to write features about this? No, I don't. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm hearing Jay. Is that Jay Allen? That there's a lot of nasty finishes on the UFC undercard. I'm going to get there very shortly. Let's continue on down the road of what's left here. Shakur Stevenson against Josh Padley. Shout out to Josh Padley. He tried hard. He did. He came to fight. He was in shape, even though he was working his day job. He upset Mark Chamberlain, Turkey's initial favorite fighter, last year in London when they had that big card at Wembley Stadium. So they called him on no notice. He showed up. He was game. He was always going to be outclassed from Shakur. Shakur goes on to get a 9th round stoppage. And it was after dropping Padley 3 times in round 9. And then finally, they're just like, okay, this is enough. And it was time. It was enough. The question is, should Shakur have knocked him out early? Did Shakur miss an opportunity to come out and look spectacular after his last 2 fights with Top Rank left the arena booing him, including once in his hometown? We've talked about his story all the time, and a lot of people are very harsh on him, and I try to push back on that because I like him. I believe in his talent. I think he's one of the pound for pound best, but I'm coming to terms with the things that frustrate the people that don't like him, and they're true. Should he have probably come out and just gone for it earlier? I mean, yeah, maybe, but also look, that's not his style. Shakur is a guy who's going to look great against pressure fighters, because if you pressure him, the thing people forget when they criticize Shakur and call him boring is it's not like he's jabbing and circling from the outside. Like, he's fixed that. He comes at you. It's just, he can stand at such close range, and with his defense, head movement, and his quick twitch fibers, he can just kind of touch you and get out of there without big exchanges. So, like, I want to wake everybody up. Like, you're only going to see exciting Shakur against super elite opponents that can put educated pressure and bring power, the threat of power against him. Or like in his fight against Oscar Valdez, right? Like a near or quasi elite guy, but if that guy's a pressure fighter and he brings it to him, you're going to get a fun fight. Outside of that, and it probably plays into the fact that he has such brittle hands, that he came into here with the right hand that he recently had surgery on that still had that big lump on it, which is a scar. He said in the interviews coming in, I can only fight twice a year because that's the amount of time between fights that I need to kind of repair my hands and pick them up. Same thing happened to Floyd in his welterweight run. He'd fly to Germany and get that Kobe surgery and the needles in, I think, right? I mean, like he had to do anything he could to keep it going. Shakur's kind of in that boat, and it did look like Shakur hurt his left hand in this fight, and that compromises power shots. I'm not giving him an excuse. If you think he's boring and you don't want to see him, that's fine. But he is one of the 10 best fighters pound for pound. He is a future pound for pound king, and his career badly needs Tank Davis. Badly needs it. He does. And I think Tank Davis needs him too, but we'll see if that can be made later this year. Shakur did ask for it after the fight, and whatever, we'll see. The other fight was the first one. And this was the fight that was truly getting the least amount of attention. I mean, even the Adames fight seemed to get more attention coming in because of Sheeraz. But Joshua Buatsi coming in at 19-0, the bronze medalist, but from UK, managed by AJ, looked like 4 or 5 years ago like he was going to be one of the biggest breakthrough next stars, but has just kind of progressed little by little. Went in there against a reformed Callum Smith, 34. Only losses to Canelo and not so far away recently to Beterbiev by knockout. But Mundo of the famous Smith Bros, I mean, he brought the fight to Buatsi. And even though Buatsi in the end loses a unanimous decision here, 115-113, 119-110, and 116-112, Buatsi showed me a lot in his first defeat. Like, it's still the same frustration that we kind of have with Buatsi, where he doesn't throw enough punches. But for everything Callum Smith was doing, jumping all over him and putting the pressure on him and throwing big combinations, Buatsi was picking his moments and landing massive left hooks and just really a couple times hurting Smith. And this became a spirited back and forth action fight at a high level too. This was a great fight to kick off this. And it was real. And this was for the interim light heavyweight title that Buatsi has, right? Not a real belt, but kind of puts him in position to finally fight. Look, it's a logjam atop of light heavyweight, right? The champions have a trilogy coming up. It's a logjam, but this was such a mature performance from Callum Smith to return himself to the title picture, where he was more action oriented than normal, took the fight to the younger horse, that I really feel like if David Benavidez needs to stay busy, or David Morrell Jr., like, Callum Smith as an opponent is not a bad idea. That's even a pay-per-view opponent for Benavidez, in my opinion. So that was a reformative victory. And we will see Buatsi again. He is 33 though, but he's going to have to find that extra gear consistently and not just be a counterpunching power shot guy, but be able to outwork a guy in a big fight. They both hurt each other a few times. This was just manly. It was manly stuff. So Katie Bivol probably in shambles tonight. Maybe though, maybe this will lead to financial dividends for her and the kids. I don't know. I don't know who's right in this domestic situation. It's none of my business. Do I follow it anyway? Sometimes I do. All right. That's going to be it right now. We didn't get Rafe Bugs. You got me an hour late. Apologies all around. You got me though for nearly an hour. Cocoa Beans, is BC wearing matching bottoms to this jam? I have black pajama sweatpants on underneath here, as I normally do when I work. Thank you. But do I have anything on underneath? That's the big question here. Wow, look at this. So little Lou is like, yo, I'm gonna help out what we got going on here. I'm gonna support the system here. Thank you, little Lou. Make sure Luke buys you that acai drink Monday morning, gooey way. Yeah, she's talking about the one of that pregame preview episode where I bought that big acai share. I didn't buy it. Sorry, our producer bought it for me. And I dropped it right when we exited. And Luke laughed at me like we're frat boys in the military. I probably had it coming there, but thank you. But Ortiz Jr. reminded me of the old Mexican boxing technique of striking to the body to knock lower the crowd. Yes, great call. He was doing 3-punch combinations that were beginning to the body to bring the guard of Madrimov down, and then I loved it. Was brilliant stuff from Virgil Ortiz. This is good for boxing that this guy's healthy, still unbeaten, and still climbing, and makes action fights. Damn, little Lou, thank you for supporting this here thing that we do there. Sandine's chiming in quickly. Shout out AG1. Yeah, so I think I saw some comments where people are calling us hypocrites or me hypocrites. I just want to go on record and say, although I like to make jokes on things. And I definitely, and we put back in the day, if you don't think we tried to push back behind the scenes when we got Money Lion dropped on us with those loans, and we got Lords and Lairds dropped on us, like that was stuff we pushed back on. I F with AG1. I still do. I know I told you I was using up the end of my product, but now that they are back in this game and they want to be on MK, they sent me a beautiful package, and I've been re-energized by it and it really enjoying it. So to me, AG1's a good product. Does it not do things that people thought it might, and now it's suddenly the scam? To me, it's not. To me, it's vitamins, and it tastes good, and it makes me feel healthy. So I'll be reading those ads for MK, and it's fine, and that's where we're at. So you don't have to call Luke a hypocrite, and call, if you want to call me one, say it to my face. But I actually like the product and I support that. So there you go. Make that money, player. Thank you. Trying. I mean, look, here's the deal. Luke and I both won't accept products or won't personally read products that we have issues with. Everybody knows that behind the scenes, it's established. I don't have an issue with this one, and it helps the show. And in general, the only way we're going to get to the next level on this show and do the kind of things we used to do with that Showtime budget is sponsorships. So, sometimes you got to play the game to win. So there you go. Dave could use those vitamins. We know where he's been putting that thing back in the military, if you know what I mean. All right. What do you got for me now, Sandine? Yeah, it is good stuff. I don't know if it'll change your life, but it's a nice, I don't do a great job at getting my vitamin daily recommendations. So that helps me. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. That's about it for now. Appreciate everybody out there. Thank you for being you. Thank you for joining this here chat. And we reacted. We'll be back Monday morning, 11 a.m. live from New York City. Luke Thomas and your boy BC. And that's about all I got to say right now. All right. So there you go. Yeah, it's an interesting spot. That's all I got. Thank you very much.